call this meeting to order of the Southbridge Town Council on Monday, November 1st, 2021 at 7:17 p.m. Agenda item number 1, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With the passing of Mario Pachone, Southbridge has lost another son to whom much is indebted. Mario passed away on Sunday, October 24th, leaving behind a mourning family and a grateful town. Mario's service to others started with his serving in the United States Army as a member of the prestigious 82nd Airborne Division. He served on the first town council, having been elected in 1974, and serving for Precinct 5. He was re-elected to another term in 1976. He also served on the Housing Authority for 6 years and was a member of the VFW, the American Legion, and the Southbridge Optimist Club. Mario owned Mario's Restaurant for 54 years, serving the best in Italian cuisine and choosing to remain in town as circumstances dictated his changing locations. In lieu of all this, I ask for a moment of silence in regards to the passing of Mario. Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adams?
Present.
Councillor Catrona?
Present.
Councillor Daniel?
Present.
Councillor Dow? Councillor Jovan?
Present.
Councillor Lazo?
Present.
Councillor Marquetti?
Present.
Councillor Ryan?
Present.
And Councillor Steves?
Present.
9 present. We have a quorum. Agenda item number 3, consider and accept the Town Council meeting minutes of Monday, October 18th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any amendments, discussion, changes, additions, deletions, subtractions? Very well. All those in favor? Those opposed?
Abstain.
And those abstaining? 1, 2 abstaining. Very good. 702. Agenda item number 4, subcommittee reports. General Government, Councilor Orion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight, including items number 10 and items number 12. Item number 11 bypassed us due to the necessity and came up at full council. And also item number 14. I will discuss more details pertaining to the item when that item comes up.
Very good. Thank you. Department of Public Works, Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did have a meeting of the DPW's subcommittee on October 26th. Tonight's agenda, number 13 on deer hunting, we voted on that. We had a good discussion on street constructions in town, an update on Dresser Hill Road. We discussed the carpets in the town hall. The meeting is available on Cable Access Channel 192 and Cable Access YouTube channel. No meeting is scheduled at this time. Thank you.
Very good. Education and Human Services, Councilor Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A meeting of the EHS subcommittee was held on October 21st, 2021. All members were present at that meeting. We have one item for vote this evening, item 9. Other items on the agenda were a meeting with the school receiver, Dr. Jeffrey Villar. We had a very good conversation about a variety of factors. We talked about the school year ending last year, as well as the start of the school year this year. Dr. Villar gave us an update on some of the initiatives that they have this year and ongoing projects. We also had a discussion and we came to an agreement on what the budget format would look like for presentation to council. As you recall, last year's budget cycle, there was some conversation about the line item budget and the details that were provided. Dr. Villar and Seth Racine, who does the finances for the town, came up with a proposal that was agreed upon by not only subcommittee members, but those other council members that had the ability to weigh in on that conversation. So they will provide a line item type budget along with all the other budget dialogue that he had proceeded last year. The final conversation, and there was some discussion and objections by a fellow counselor. However, we talked about the capital program, and that wasn't so much related to capital items. It was really about the buildings and the facilities study and a conversation as to how we could partner with the school district and what our role and responsibility as a council, as the landlord of the buildings of all our school properties, and how we may go forward in evaluating what the district looks like, the number of students, student enrollment, and the possibility of forming some kind of committee to work with the school district, or how that would work to see about the inventory of school buildings and how we will best deliver education to the students here in the town of Southbridge. And that will morph into part of the goals and objectives where the town managers will work with the receiver as well as looking at that program. So it was a very good meeting. I think we had a great dialogue with the receiver. We also talked about how, as a district, and what the indications would be for us to come out of receivership and how that would look. And that's really a preliminary discussion. Obviously, COVID has put the brakes on a lot of the initiatives, so they're restarting that. But we'll have further discussions throughout the year as to how, as a community, we can work with the receiver to come out of the status that we're in. Thank you. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 8th at 6:30 p.m. And that will start at 6:30 or later, depending on how long the PPP meeting goes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Planning and Development, Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did not have a meeting since our last town council meeting. We have tentatively scheduled 22 November for our next Planning and Development Subcommittee meeting. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Protection of Persons and Property, Councilor Lazo.
I have no report at this time, Mr. Chairman, but we do have a meeting scheduled November 8th, 6 o'clock in the Veterans Room.
Very good, thank you. Agenda item number 5, Chairman's announcements. I have no announcements this evening. Agenda item number 6, Town Manager's announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Nothing significant. As I've indicated in some emails, we do have some people leaving, and we've been doing a lot of interviewing to fill the positions for the reorg that we talked about recently. But I would like to just thank Ms. Kim Farron. I think between now and the next time we meet, she is going to depart for a new adventure and new endeavors, and I wish her well. She's been with the town, I believe, 9 years, serving as our HR specialist and our confidential clerk, and she's one of the handful of folks that are going on to try different things after the pandemic, and I wish her and her family well, and we're working diligently to find good people to replace those spots. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Agenda item number 7, presentations. The first presentation is from the Southbridge Veterans Initiative update. I believe we have Ms. Price coming up and Mr. Cullors. Yep. You may.
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Veterans Council. My name is Tracy Price, and I am the Vice President.
Get closer to the mic.
I'm the Vice President of the Veterans Council. So far, we have raised over $25,000, and we have just completed the survey at a cost of approximately $5,000. At this time, the Veterans Council is working closely with the town manager and the accountant to hire an engineer with the proper requirements for ethics and requirements for the town. As far as the fundraiser goes, we are in phase 1, that is for the conceptual design, the engineer, the surveyor, and the final design. When phase 2 does start, that'll be when we break ground, and that'll also be for items such as pavers, gazebos, picnic tables, gazebos, and the 3-tiered monument system. And I just wanted to say that on Saturday, November 6th, I'm not sure if everybody knows, we are having at the Armory from 5 to 11, we are hosting a fight night sponsored by the council and Uptown Boxing. And Uptown Boxing is going to be providing all the fighters, and hopefully it's going to be a great fundraiser, and maybe we'll see some of you guys there. And the Veterans Day ceremony will be held at the World War I Monument at 11 o'clock on the 11th.
Thank you very much. That's a fine presentation. I'd like to say that I'm really excited about the potentials for honoring our veterans from the various conflicts that we've been involved with, and the fact that you're taking this on and Mr. Cullis is taking this on is really speaking well for the town, and I just want to thank you. I really do appreciate the work that you're doing.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Any questions?
Any questions?
No? Okay, very good. The second presentation this evening is a WRTA update by Councilor Orion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'll be brief. I just wanted to provide, it's been roughly a year since I've been appointed to the WRTA as the representative for Southbridge, working with the manager on this, and I just wanted to bring you an update from the last meeting. We had a presentation on the fare system. So before we went to fare free, they started instituting a new fare system in the buses that will be easier to track data, easier to collect different forms of payment, etc. Modernizing the bus system. And we're almost done with those updates. Now we're reaching, our next meeting is going to be a vote on whether or not to continue the fare-free proposal that the Worcester RTA has continued to do. We got a number of statistics at that meeting. One thing I'm very happy to continue to report on is that we continue to have the best return rate of passengers on the bus system compared to every other RTA in the state. It's a 10% difference. While the average is between 60 to 75% return rate, we're at 85%. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we've been prominently advertising that the bus system is free and easily accessible right now. I have gotten a number of calls over the last week from organizations really concerned about this proposal continuing. It's my intention to continue to support this at this time, since there does seem to be some movement within the Senate on this particular topic. There's been a lot of talk, in particular from Senator Harriet Chandler, who represents Worcester, or a portion there of Worcester. And there is a lot of talk about providing more funding opportunities for RTAs, in particular RTAs that continue this fare-free model. So the state is taking notice. I will say, I'm keeping in mind that, this money that came from the federal government is not going to last forever. This is not a long-term solution. But in the meantime, in the short term, I do plan on continuing to support this with another 6-month extension of the fare-free proposal for the bus system. However, that's to provide us more time to continue to work with the legislative delegation and transport committees to make sure that we're able to include more funding for RTAs going forward. I want to continue to see more of this money used towards infrastructure and investments in our system as well, not just the continuance of the reduction and elimination of fares. But I still think at this time, with everything as it has continued to be a good model that has worked for Worcester County and has worked for Southbridge, and I intend to continue to support it at this time. And that concludes my update, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Any questions for the councilor? Councilor Adams.
Just real quick, Councilor Ryan, did you say a date when your next vote is?
The next meeting?
Yeah, the next meeting.
Yeah, the next meeting, it's the third Thursday of the month is always the date, unless for some reason they change it. So the next meeting date will be on the 18th. They meet at 8:30 a.m. So it's usually 8:30 to 10 to 11. Probably going to be closer to 11 at this one because it's going to be a long meeting, and we already have a number of people from the outside who requested to speak during this meeting. Yeah, so it would be from 8:30 to 11 on the 18th of November.
Thank you.
No problem. And it is virtual, by the way. We've continued to keep the meetings virtual. We've seen that there's been more participation in the Regional Transit Authority by having virtual meetings. And we have continued to support that model since it's still being allowed under the executive order. So we're please come on by, come by and pop on for a visit. I know the manager's been on a number of times with me during these meetings. They're quite informative. Find out a lot of information. Dennis Lipka is a really great administrator for the RTA system, so I think we're in really good hands, and I think the committee overall is it's a pretty good group of people. So.
Anyone else? Very good, thank you. Agenda item number 8, Citizens Forum. Are there any citizens that would like to address the council about an issue not on the agenda this evening? Okay. Sir, come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Donald Solinsky, Henry Street, Southbridge. I just want to say a few things about the absurdity of the removal of my dog Vegas from me, done with the recommendation of the Animal Control Officer Spencer, and I quote, for the possibility that it would happen again. I want to first point out the illogic of both the council and the ACO. You all said that Vegas was a danger to the residents of Southbridge, while at the same time you officially labeled him a nuisance dog, not a dangerous dog. Follow the logic there, if you will, or lack of logic, moreover. Then you said that this dangerous dog was to be adopted out to someone. Why would you agree to do that? I have a couple of thoughts on why. One is that the ACO never really intended to let him go, and she intended to release him. Why wouldn't she release him to me? I'll tell you why. Because the dog was only a tool to punish me. You all used the life of a loving animal to inflict punishment on me. You and her kept that poor dog in a cage for 4 months, knowing all along that he wasn't going to be given back to me, to the one person who was best to care for that dog. You didn't care to think about what physical or emotional pain you were inflicting on him, not to mention the pain inflicted on me. I've been through a lot in my life, believe me, but nothing compares to this. But the dog is the important one here, not me. While we're at it, this highly competent animal control officer couldn't find a home for him for 4 months. Then it takes a phone call from a lawyer to a lawyer to get someone else involved in placing him. By the way, Mr. Adams, at the end of the last hearing, my advocate, Mary Lou Marganis from Animal Rescue Kennel, approached both you and Miss Spencer, saying she could get that dog rehomed, and you both told her to get away. You pushed your arm up in a stop manner, and Miss Spencer says, Mary Lou, no, in a very rude way. Well, she got it done in 4 hours, what the so-called highly qualified ACO couldn't get done in 4 months. 4 hours she got it done, got him homed. And she did it quietly and in spite of all the roadblocks and ignoring all her pleas. How do you think this all got done? This rescue bending over backwards with your demands that I sign away all my rights, all my legal rights. It was ARC's relationship in the rescue that got this done. You need a problem solver that's not a disciplinarian for an animal control officer. Someone who will work with the community, just like most fair policemen will,
For instance, when you get caught speeding, sometimes the officer gives you a warning, not a ticket. They look at the circumstance, the level of the offense. Well, this is my warning to this town. I refuse to allow all of you to do to someone else in this town what you have done to me. If it takes me standing up here every Monday night, so be it. It's my First Amendment right to speak my mind, if only for 5 minutes. Speaking of my First Amendment rights, last week, I was accused of threatening all of you by Mr. McCall because I said I would continue to speak out on this issue. Well, I take that as a threat to me and my freedoms. You all thought that because I'm poor and just one person, that I was going to allow you to seize my best friend from me, and I was going to lay down and take it. Well, you're all wrong. I have the truth on my side, and I will continue to speak it.
Thank you, Mr. Zelinski. Is there anyone else that would like to approach the podium at this time?
Hi there, Denise Clements, 128 Country Club Place. I'm coming to you with a different hat on tonight. One, for the holidays. So, it's that time of year again. And we are hard at work at the workshop, getting items ready for distribution weekend, which is coming up this Saturday and Sunday, as well as the following weekend. So that is the 6th and the 7th, and the 13th and 14th. Holiday Visions started approximately 12 years ago with an idea to add a little happiness to some of the vacant windows in town, and maybe get a tree and light it up on Main Street. And I don't know, somewhere along the way, some holiday magic happened, and we had Santa and a sleigh, and the tradition has continued. Even last year with COVID, we were able to at least have a rolling rally parade, and that worked out really well. So this year, we are back on with a more scaled-down version at the Common, but on November 27th, Saturday, November 27th, which is the Saturday after Thanksgiving, we will indeed still have a holiday parade. You can find out all the information on the Southbridge Holiday Visions Facebook page, which is transparent. The posts are transparent. You don't have to have a Facebook account. Some people think that sometimes you have to have a Facebook account to go there. But if you just do a Google search, you'll come up with Southbridge Holiday Visions Facebook page. And if you look under posts or the main page, you can usually find all our information there. We also generally will send things into the cable station, our wonderful Southbridge Community Television, who posts most of everybody's ongoing events. So that evening, 6 p.m. will be the parade. It will be the longer route, if anybody remembers from last year. We're able to use the parking lot again for lining up and heading down Mechanic to Charlton to Central, back down Main Street, where we had a great welcome last year, and then to the Common, where Santa this time will get off and will get off the sleigh and come and light the holiday Christmas tree. And then he will stay for self-portraits. This year we do not have a photographer, and if people want their children taken with Santa, who will be wearing a face shield, they are welcome to take their own pictures. We will try to have some of the same traditions that we've always had. We are working right now to find out a few of the final details for that evening. But safe to say, one of the things we're very excited about is that the Southbridge Middle School Chorus is going to bless us with some wonderful holiday tunes. We will have a DJ that will also play music in between. We are waiting word on the band. And anyone else, if you've got some bell ringing or some caroling that you'd like to do, you're a group out there, please get in touch with us. We'd love to have you come out that evening and spread some holiday cheer with us. I'm trying to think. So the items that we talk about, the things that you see on the streets that originally were started by Rudy DeGregorio, gone now quite some time. We've kept up that tradition. I'm very fortunate to have some close family members who really assist me, and a few volunteers. So, we're getting buzzed here. So, but it doesn't happen by itself. We could use more help. If anyone out there is interested in being part of the 2021 vision, get in touch with us. That information with our phone number and all is on the Holiday Visions Facebook page. You can also email us at southbridgeholidayvisions@yahoo.com. Again, we have posters out. We have different ways to contact us. Feel free to reach out. Let us know that you'd like to participate in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you're good with carpentry. Maybe you like to hang on to a paintbrush or just assist us as best you can. Distribution, which starts, as I said, this weekend, at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning or any part of the day thereof. If you want to find us and join us, we could use some strong hands to move the items to the streets of town, to the town common, all the areas you've seen them, and help us to erect them. We will do that on Saturday from 9 to 4. We will again return and do Sunday 10 to 3. And whatever we don't finish, we will pick back up on the 13th and start that all over again. So again, if you have the ability to join us for a short time, you have a truck, you want to bring it and help us distribute the items, let us know. It's very important that we plan for the amount of people. We try to provide a little bit of water, a little sustenance to anyone who helps us. And so, if you can be part of the 2021 vision, we encourage you to do that. And let's see, what else? The parade. You can also find the information of how to join us in the parade. If you would like to put some lights on your car, or you have a truck, or you want to tow an actual float, it's very easy these days to get creative, and you can join us. Again, you need to register with us for the parade. That's very important. We ask if we could know that you're going to participate by November 19th. And this information is on the Southbridge Cable TV at this point, and again on our Facebook. So get in touch with us, be part of the vision this year, spread some holiday cheer, and thank you for all that have participated in the past. We look forward to seeing you again this year.
What's your email address again?
The email address is southbridgeholidayvisions@yahoo.com. It's the same as our Facebook page, basically. If you are listening and you want to contact me directly, well, the number's out there, 508-277-4494. It's the best way to get in touch with me. Answer all your questions. Whatever it is, if you're a business, you want to participate, you want to donate, we are 501(c) because we are sanctioned by the town. Donations go directly to the town, and we are reimbursed for costs that way for the small amount that we do. But if there's some way you want to participate, just reach out, ask us. We'll let you know how you can help. So, thank you, and don't forget, it's coming up. Let's all be a part of the vision. Thank you for your time.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Clements. You seem to outdo yourself every year. I hope that people at home will seriously take under consideration what your needs are and come down and volunteer their time this weekend, and also consider being a part of the parade later in the month. It's definitely a good time. The kids love it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with this year. So thank you. Agenda item number 9, vote to confirm the appointment of Leanne Mainville to the Recreation Committee effective immediately through June 30, 2024, pending completion of the state ethics training.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Jovan.
Thank you. This item came before the EHS Subcommittee, was referred back to Council with a positive 5-0 vote. I do know the Recreation Director is here. It was the first opportunity I got to meet him. I don't know if anybody else has met him. So if you would like to come up and say a few words about this appointment, I would defer to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Hello, Michael Brunel, the Recreation Director. I would hope that we'd all vote for Leanne Mainville to join the Recreation Committee. Getting the committee going is pretty much the only thing that's going to be able to hear the voices of the town and what they want to see as far as recreation goes. And she is a mother, a grandmother, was a Girl Scout leader, and has been living in Southbridge for the last 4 years. So I think her want to improve family events and youth events, I think she has that want in her. Thank you very much.
Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you to the Recreation Director for starting that back up. I know it's been tough for you to get past the first hurdle, but once you do, I think others will follow, and I appreciate you doing all the work, and look forward to seeing that committee stand up. Thank you.
I appreciate it. If anyone else knows anyone that would like to join the committee, feel free to contact me. I'm at the Armory. Stop by anytime.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? Very well. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Anyone opposed? Unanimous of all present. Thank you very much. Item number 10, vote to support the letter of intent to apply for the Veterans Heritage Grant for memorial preservation before the November 7, 2021 deadline.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. This came up before the General Government Subcommittee last 2 weeks ago. A presentation was given from Chairman James Culler of the Trustees of Soldiers, Marines, and Airmen Memorial Committee, which was resurrected in 2019. He went at quite a bit of length describing what was going to happen with the restoration of these monuments, so I'll actually let him take the reins, if that would be all right, Mr.
Very
Chair.
good. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, real quick. Mr. Chair, I hate to interrupt. I'm going to recuse myself, so I'm going to leave the chambers. Thank you.
Certainly.
Good evening. James Collars. I'm the chairman of the Trustees, Soldiers, Sailors, Airmen, and Marines Memorial Board. It's a state-mandated board for every town that has veterans monuments to help maintain these monuments and things. So the state law was discovered back in 2019, so they brought us, got together with a few of us, got this board started up. We've been working on trying to figure out ways to get funding and things to just better maintain some of these monuments. Several of them are, the main ones we're working on right now are called the neighborhood monuments. There's 8 of them scattered around town. Some of them have already been moved. Businesses requested them to be removed. And a couple of them were in parks and areas that were getting just essentially crapped on. So they got moved over. There's 3 of them now in Oak Ridge Park, or Oak Ridge Cemetery in a central location there. The plan is to get a few more of them moved over there very soon. What we'd like to do is there's a state grant, the Schwab grant, that comes around every year. We need to get the letter of intent, just intending to go for this grant. It's for matching funds, and we'd like to get this letter of intent out. It needs to be out by November 7th. And this is just, what we're asking for now is the support to send this letter of intent out and say, okay, yes, we're going to try for this grant. We've met with a monument company that does the work on the bronze monuments to refurbish all these neighborhood monuments. They haven't really been touched ever since they were put in. You know, all these neighborhood monuments are for World War I veterans that were killed overseas. And so what we'd like to do is get these plaques refurbed. And then eventually, along, all this is separate from the Veterans Council initiative. We're then going to get them moved into the World War Monument Park across the street here. Get them and rearrange them in there. Now, that being said, the Veterans Council is trying to redo the World War I monument itself. And, you know, we're trying to upgrade that park along with that. But this is something the town hasn't done for, I don't know that that part of it's ever been funded. They redid the honor roll 10, 12 years ago, I think. Didn't go so good. You notice that one's already peeling, the veneer's coming off those plaques. That'll all get redone eventually. We're working with the town manager to get funds so that we can find some matching. The Schwab grant is for maintenance, repair, generating electronic records from hard copies, things like that. So this grant will match funds, match out. We can get volunteer hours for these funds at $34 an hour. for if we get volunteers to help do things. And we're working on finding funding that we'll have to get, figure out what the monument company, when they come back with the results for their, and tell us what it would cost to redo these monuments and figure out how much money we need. And then we're working with the town manager, trying to find funding. That has to be out in January. But right now, all we need is the support for sending the letter of intent. If anybody's got any questions about what else we got going, I'd entertain those. All right, Peg's been helping us.
Ms. Dean?
with the letter and everything.
Yeah, so since the Gen Gov subcommittee, where I had initially suggested that they may want to ask for matching funds, we did contact the Archivist of Commonwealth of Massachusetts, who is the grantor, and they stated that the legislature requires the 50% match. However, the letter of intent is to assist the State Historical Records Advisory Board and applicants in commitment and planning. Applications, as you mentioned, are due in January, giving those who file the letter of intent time to get the cost estimates, plan, and the budget. So I know it feels like a vague proposition, but the intent is for them to kind of whittle down some of the competition. They get a lot of demand for these. So if they can get the initial support from the town, then that allows those who met that initial milestone to then pursue the details.
Very good. Councilor Ryan.
I would just want to continue and say thank you actually to Peg, because that was one of the things we had mentioned during the meeting was we wanted more quotes and more information about how much this was going to cost the town. And now that we know a little bit more about the process and that this letter of intent is to start this process so we can get, have time for those quotes, that even makes it a better vote in my mind to send this up. So thank you, Peg.
Councilor Lazo.
I think the gentleman summed it up when he brought up the maintenance of monuments. I remember Florence Chandler was the first one to do the Gatineau and some of the bigger statues, the bronze. They were all green, and I commend you and your efforts. I'm going to support this here tonight. It's one of those things that had been stagnant for a while, and maybe you're the man to put the paddle back on and get some life back in there. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Very good. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? And we have one recusal. Thank you. Item number 11, vote to approve the MIIA Health Benefits Trust Renewal Proposal for January 1, 2022 through December 31, 2022. Blue Medicare prescription rates based on continuing the current enrollment level.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Manager, I believe.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This came to us the night of the Gen Gov meeting, and I wasn't able to get enough information, wasn't aware that this particular thing needed a vote for the council until that point in time. We're working, as we always do, to renew our rates. The information provided to us was that this is something we do every year for our retirees and others, and this particular item was a favorable rate that we were given with a modest increase. So based on my conversations with our treasurer, Sharon Ashley, and her conversations with Maya, we would recommend that the council approve this.
Very good. Any discussion? Very well. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Unanimous of all present. Item number 12, vote to ratify the contract between the Town of Southbridge and Cook & Company Insurance Services, Incorporated, to provide a detailed health plan management consultant to the town in the amount of $9,800 per year, effective September 1, 2021 through August 31, 2022, renewable for 2 additional years at the sole discretion of the town.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, this was recommended unanimously by the General Government Subcommittee. This is just a continuance. We already use this person in order to manage our healthcare, our health plans, so this was just a continuation and a renewal of the contract.
Very good. Councilor Steves.
Just for quick clarification, because I remember this coming through Gen Gov when I was chairman. I just want to make it clear, so this would be the second year of this contract, but the way it's phrased here, the contract is renewable for 2 additional years, so I'm assuming that this would be, that we would have 1 additional year rather than 2. Is that correct, Mr. Manager? Because we originally approved this when I was chairman of Gen Gov.
I don't recall the renewal, but we have used them in the past. We used them when our contract expired with them. There was a question that came up at subcommittee, I think it was Councilor Marchetti, wanted to know if there had been a lapse. When we have the contract, we typically only use them at the periods in time when we go out. And I believe your question was renewable. Typically, when we have something that's renewable, it's an option for us to extend if we're getting it at a favorable rate. What these individuals have done, we've utilized them here in the past. Ms. Zawadzki had recommended them that we continue using them going forward. Ms. Ashley and I, we've used them in a different town. They go out and do the comparison of plans. So under procurement law, even if you have the option to renew, you still have to justify it by doing some research. So if we came up in that 1 year and we want to exercise that, we still have to do some level of due diligence to see whether it's worthwhile for us to renew that. Does that answer your question?
Well, I would just wanted to clarify, as I said, because we approved it at least last year. I don't remember, I think that was the first time we had done it, I could be wrong. So wouldn't this, what I'm saying is, wouldn't this be, and so where it says this contract is renewable for 2 additional years at the sole discretion of the town, wouldn't we actually have 1 year left and then have to renegotiate a contract? Or would this just simply extend it for 2 more years at our discretion?
No, we would have to exercise that right. The contract is renewable 2 additional years at the sole discretion of the town. So we would have to affirmatively write them a letter saying we're exercising our option to renew this at this rate. If at the end of 1 year we don't feel we need it, we don't have to do anything. That would be in my opinion. Or moreover, I would write a letter that we're not going to renew. We're not going to extend that exercise that option.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Anyone else? Very good. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Unanimous of all present. Agenda item 13, vote to allow deer hunting in the town of Southbridge watershed for the current 2021 deer hunting season beginning on October 12, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2021.
So moved. Second.
Councilor Marchetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. This was approved at our subcommittee to send it up to council for discussion, 4-0 vote. I did have some reservations about this because, well, first of all, it's a little bit late planning for this. Deer hunt, as everyone knows, deer hunting has already started. There was some questions. I thought the town manager asked some excellent questions about liability, if there was going to be any waivers up there for so that the town is not held liable should there be any accidents. There's also a question about, this is in our zoning bylaw, and whether or not this is prohibited in that area. I know Councilor Steve said there was no hunting in the prohibited uses, but I'm not sure that because it's not written in there that it's still allowed. I'm not sure about that. So I did have some reservations about it, about whether or not we should allow hunting. This is an area where our water reservoir is. I do know that the Quabbin Reservoir does allow it, but they also plan a year in advance for this. And they have somebody sitting right there waiting for them to bring the deer out to check, because I believe it's deer hunting laws. They have to have the deer checked after they shoot it. So that was all. That were my only concerns. Thank you.
Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For you, question about, they need a special permit to go hunt in that location, or any hunter just can go and hunt there? And where they can get that special permit if they need it?
Good evening. At this time, we're not looking to do a special permit. This would just be the regular state deer hunting permit that anybody can obtain. I think it is important to understand that this has only been prohibited on town lands that is the watershed. Technically, there's other hunting on other state and town lands already in the town. I don't know that people are completely aware of that, but like up near the airport, there's already hunting up in that area. So this would just be opening it up very similar to what is already done on those lands. Hunters already have to follow the rules, like with a deer tag, and have their tags inspected just like anywhere else. That would be the same. Here, we could institute a permit process in the future, but at this time, we're just doing what we kind of call a soft opening, where we will, say that it's not prohibited and only use word of mouth to get it out. So only people basically listening to council or that are familiar with, us and might, our police. There's a lot of our local policemen who also hunt in this area. I have DPW workers that hunt, but hunt around this area. They might be interested in hunting up on those lands. We're not going to allow hunters to drive their vehicles up there. They'd still have to park outside the plant and walk in. So it's still going to limit people's access to the lands. This is all being done. I want to make sure that we understand why this is being done. We had our forester go out there, and he was specifically looking at some of the areas that we had recently cut in the last 10 years and looking at the health and the regrowth of our forest. And what he's found is that all the young trees are being eaten by the deer. So we are not getting that regeneration that we were hoping to get with the tree cuts that we had done 10 years ago. We aren't seeing the growth and the regrowth of the trees, which was what we really want to do to have a healthy, sustained forest. And with that, the indication is we have too many deer in this area, and they're eating all the young undergrowth that is not growing up. So we need to do stuff to encourage the growth of those trees, to make sure that our watershed stays healthy. And having a proper deer population is the way to go.
May I continue?
Go ahead.
Thank you. And that you're going to allow only in that specific area, or every
So the other
town property?
The other areas aren't prohibited at this time. Only area that has been prohibited is the watershed. So unless the town council took a vote that there was no hunting on public lands, there already is hunting on public lands. So right now, the only area that it has been prohibited is the watershed land.
That land is posted?
I don't know if it's posted, but I think it's posted in actually some of the boarding areas, but I'm not specifically sure, but I know that it has not been open to hunting.
So are you going to remove the sign?
If there are signs, they would be removed.
And that they're going to be allowed for all the time, or only this year for now to see?
This year for now.
So are we going to revote on to close the, I will have to revote again to not allow it to be open for the public to be hunting there?
Well, right now, this vote is specific for the time frame for this deer season. It's a vote to allow it to be open this deer season.
Okay.
It's specific, so it'd revert back to not being open after this deer season.
Just not to confuse the hunter.
Nope.
Next year they go there, hunt, and then they got a ticket, fine, happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Lazo.
I think one of the things we have to keep in mind, back when we purchased the water supply, Chet Spievogel was one of the big gurus on the watershed land and the dams, and it was like a preservation area. They didn't want any people in the water area, but we didn't have a filtration plant at the time. And they had some contaminants in other watershed properties and other communities that led him to believe that it should be off limits for recreation, hunting, and various other things. Any human action up in that area where the watershed was. Since then, under the Safe Water Drinking Act, we built the water treatment plant, which the water is now filtrated through the filters and stuff and then put into the pipeline. So there's a lot of things that have changed over the years, like, cutting the forest and doing different things, as the DPW director said. And then after, the regrowth is not happening. So I think I'm in favor of this. I think it's safe to allow it, and I think be a good measuring stick this year to see what we should do in the future.
All set? Councilor Ryan, then Councilor Steves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'll be brief. Heather is completely right, though. The deer are a nuisance, especially since, we've gotten rid of their natural predator. When we now have to act as the predator in order to keep this population down, and Heather's 100% right. They are devastating to new growth when they are out of control. There's no natural predators anymore to take care of these deer. We're going to allow it. It's the only way to be able to sustainably keep that area safe while also keeping the deer population under control too, so they don't end up wiping themselves out either. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Councilor Steves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask Heather, is there a plan for the forester to come back at the end of the deer season and actually take a look at it, or would it?
So the forester that we're using, we have basically for the next 10 years. So he'll be able to monitor and make recommendations and see what he's seeing from year to year within the health of the forest.
Okay. And also, I was curious, although it's not directly related to hunting, if this goes well, is there a possibility of allowing other non-ATV type recreation back on the property? Because I remember we closed it down to virtually everything after 9/11.
So I guess yes, but we need to do it in a very controlled manner.
Mm-hmm.
We have allowed other recreation in that. We allow hikes when there was the last Green Valley,
Mm-hmm.
when they're being led by somebody. We don't, there's a couple different things going there. There's the 1,000 acres.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want people getting lost. It's not marked. Hunters get familiar with their area and have their own tools for doing that, and I do understand that a lot of avid hikers do too, but we need to have some type of knowing that people are in there and get out safely. And so it's a tricky level of how much control we have to bed, so it's probably better to have it being some type supervised when we're going to have recreation events in there, instead of just open passive recreation.
All set?
Thanks.
Councilor Jovan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to DPW Director. If this motion goes successfully this evening, could you just advise those abutters that live on Brecknick Road that we're allowing hunting this year, so that you
So
don't
they
get
don't,
a lot of calls to the police
Yeah.
department saying that, only because I've, personally know people up there, and I know they watch that watershed quite heavily, so, but all those abutters, so that they know that hunting's going to be allowed. Thank you.
Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. As I said before, our zoning bylaws do not allow recreation in that area. So that's something that, I'll tell you the truth, I understand the need for this, but if you want to do it right, you want to change the zoning bylaws. Now, Councilor Lazo said this is recreation, so it's recreation. Hunting is recreation. So it'd probably be better if we change the zoning bylaws first, but that's going to take some time. I don't know.
I would
If you want-
recommend that we allow it as only hunting and not call it recreation.
Okay.
And then if we decide that we wanted to do something further down the line as far as passive recreation of something, we change the zoning
You're going to
then.
have to change the zoning bylaw, yeah.
At this time, instead of calling those other events recreation events, they're tours to better educate people of the watershed.
And then the
It's
other.
all in the wording, right?
The other question, or the other issue that was brought up by the town manager, I thought it was an excellent point, was the liability. So how, if you're doing a soft opening, how are you going to
So,
make sure that?
so I think
Okay.
the liability is already covered in there, even as, when you get a hunting permit, there, you're already assuming some liability, that they can't come and sue the town. And that's already built into that on public lands. I don't know that we can, if we're not having a permit process, to do any additional liability release, but I can do some more research into that. But if it's just not, if it's allowed, then they're taking on the liability themselves because they're the ones going out there and hunting.
I'm all set.
Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same like you're hunting on the state land.
Right.
The hunter, responsible for their behaviors or any mistake they do. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
I did look at a couple of communities. Mr. Cullors, I think, mentioned someone, he was there that evening, and/or the gentleman who was doing the forestry management. I didn't see anything about a release or a waiver of liability with the state, to Councilor Dow's point. One community referenced the state law that says as long as you're not charging for use of your land in the Commonwealth for public access, for recreation and other types of conservation type activities, that there's no liability on that landowner. That's one theory. The town of Northborough, though, does require a permit, and at the very bottom, when you check it, it says by submitting this, you acknowledge that you've read their hunting policies, as well as you will release and indemnify the town for anything. So there's different approaches, but Quabbin and some of the others do not have anything. I didn't see anything like that. But as I said, different towns have different wording on their policies, and one actually has, when you just apply for that permit, you're acknowledging that you're not going to hold the town harmful in any way. Just thoughts.
Anyone else? Very good. All those in favor? Those opposed? We have one opposed. 8-4. Motion passes. Item number 14, vote to adopt proposed Town Council Rule 4B, procedures for confirmation of town manager appointments to committees, boards, and commissions.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. This was brought up at a number of General Gov meetings. I want to thank the General Government Subcommittee. We had 3 different meetings on this subject. The last meeting is the only meeting we made any sort of changes to it, and they were at the suggestion of former Council Chair Denise Clements. She provided a lot of wealth of knowledge. For the record, I will read the proposed rule as was recommended unanimously by the subcommittee. All committee, board, and commission appointments and reappointments by the town manager shall be reviewed by the subcommittee of the Southbridge Town Council best fit to review the applicant before such appointment is sent to the full town council for confirmation. So this is pretty standard. This is just setting up a process on the issue that I had outlined when I first got on the council, that I felt like we needed a bit more transparency around the appointment and reappointment process. And all this does is reinforce the current practice that we've had for many years. When I was a citizen member on these town subcommittees under different managers, this was the process, and it just solidifies it into a role that the applicant will come before the subcommittee best fit, and after that time, after it's reviewed, it just gets sent up to full council instead of just bypassing the subcommittees altogether, where we can have some real time to find out information and details about the candidate. So.
All set?
I'm all set, Mr.
Very good. Councilor Steves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the most important word actually is it's reappointments, because we have very little, historically we have had very little sight of anybody who's coming up for reappointments. We just get a long list, sometimes 30 people long, on the day we're voting them. And half of them are committees that a lot of us have never gone to. We may have, by chance, a year before they last came up for reappointment. So I think this would be really helpful in terms of just simply getting an idea, A, of who's on our boards and committees, which is really important, and B, what they're doing. We can get a bit of a review from the manager and sometimes from their own other committee members of how they're working, what they're doing, whether they're actually doing the job. That's what we need to see.
Anyone else? Councilor Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I personally have no issue with adding this to the rules and regulations. I was hoping that we would have a further review of this overall document to make sure it relates to what our actual job is as councilors. If you look at the paragraph above, it says that the subcommittee shall make a written report of activity under the jurisdiction. The report is to be turned into the chairperson before the next organizational meeting and will be used in the annual town report. Outside of Council Marquetti, in my 3 years of chairman, no subcommittee has ever filed a report. So I appreciate the work of the general government subcommittee on this. I would hope that we'd take a look at, and it's no reflection of this particular item. My point, I think I brought it up last year and I brought it up again at the beginning when we said this, was we need to look at all our rules and regulations and make sure that they're adequate and they meet what we do as a council. So I hope that we go back and look at that because there's a lot of things in there that are vague sometimes. And I don't want a written thing, I think Council Lazo and I had this conversation, we don't need a written item for everything that we do, but it really needs time that we take a look at all these rules and regulations and make sure that we comply with everything that we're supposed to do. Thank you.
Councilor Ryan.
Thank you. I just want to say, yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. It was brought up at the subcommittee meeting, actually, I believe by Councilor Adams, that he also would like to see some review of the entire rules, and I agree. I think it's time that we sit down and do a whole review. As I said at that meeting, because it was brought up, look, let's do a whole package instead of just this piecemeal, and I said, that's fine if we want to go forward with that, but because the subcommittee had taken time, 3 specific meetings to go over this particular subject, I didn't want to hold this up. But I agree. I think that's something that I have discussed with the chairman as well, that going on one of the next coming Gen Gov meetings, we're going to start this review and deep dive into the entire town council rules to see what needs to be updated and changed.
Councilor Adams.
Just for the record, yeah, I did say that at the general gov. I mean, I think it's what Councilor Jovan and Councilor Ryan has brought up. I think it's just a bigger plan here. I do know former Councilor Nash had brought this up, I believe, at the very beginning when we started serving back in 18. So I think it's due time to charter review being done, and now possibly these rules and regulations. I think just bringing it forward and changing where they need to be changed and left alone, or bettering where it needs to be better or left alone. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Very good. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Unanimous of all present. Agenda item 15, vote to approve the town manager's goals and objectives for fiscal year 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the rest of my colleagues on the council. Thank you for brief. I'll make it brief. Everybody has the document in front of you. I just want to say at the outset, this has been a challenging couple months to try to put this together due to a variety of issues, illnesses, inability to meet, illnesses on a whole bunch, family members, counselors, and everything. So did my best to put down what Councilor Steves and I had talked about, 3 key goal areas, and part of that is, as you see, personnel, financial, communications, and infrastructure asset management. And I know my conversations that I've had with the town manager and I think with other fellow councilors, bottom me is like, these goals and objectives are necessary because of the contract, and we do want goals and objectives, but we also see that there are a variety of things that the town manager undertook when he first got here, and things that have been left on the table that he still continues to work on a daily basis, not to mention the various people that we know that are leaving in the town hall and trying to implement that. So in this, I want hopefully my fellow councilors to say that this is really this year's goals and objectives, and a lot of this will morph into, some of these things will morph into next year as well. And that's why I don't think we had any timeline on these like we did with the former manager, that we had to put specific timelines due to a whole bunch of issues that we're not going to revisit this evening. So we tried to take a look at what are the key items that councils had submitted to us through the dialogue that we had at a council meeting, and things that were ongoing. So the first one really is, as we're all aware, the town manager put in and proposed to the council the reorganization of some town offices, specifically Human Resources Department. And as there was a lot of discussion and there was a lot of key points in the prior meeting that said that we wanted to see a mutual respect, teamwork, and that the town implement performance evaluations for town hall employees. And that was one of the things that the town manager, when he first got here, articulated to us. So given the fact that we do have this new human resources position that will start, the goal will be the implementation of this program. And that, I think, is something as a goal we could evaluate the town manager on as to the proposal, and now the goal is to implement this reorganizational plan to enhance employee productivity, create an atmosphere of mutual respect, teamwork, and employee accountability for job performance. Some of those objectives would recruit and staff positions relative to the reorganizational plan as approved by town council, onboarding program for new employees, improve federal and state reporting timelines, as we had conversations that there were some issues with that, the implementation and completion of performance evaluation of town hall employees, and updated personnel regulations for approval by town council. So I think that's a pretty ambitious goal, but one that I think will be ongoing as this year continues to develop. The second one was the communication, and there was a lot of conversations about how we can improve communications to and from public to increase civic engagement and participation in town government boards and commissions from all stakeholders. And part of that was to have documents in Spanish and English. The website improved and upgraded, as that was an ongoing proposal that we have, so I think that's something we can accomplish this year. And try to increase participation of residents in town government and boards. So that was another goal. Finally, I think this is the biggest area, is the infrastructure and asset management. It's complete a review of the outstanding pending projects and issues regarding infrastructures and facilities, and provide recommendations to town council. As you can see, there's 4 key big areas there. And again, I think this is where, as a council, we have to be realistic that, given all the other initiatives that we have ongoing, that to expect this by completion, fully completion, but these are things that I think, and I know that we've had on the burner, but one, which is the biggest one, I think, is the strategic plan of action for implementation of alternatives to the current curbside collection program to be implemented in March of 2024. The town of Southbridge plan to comply and implement the MS4 stormwater regulations. A recommendation to town council on how the town will proceed with addressing the recommendations from the Southbridge Town Facility Study, that study dated June 6, 2016, and Southbridge School Facility Study dated May 1st, 2019. And then a recommendation to town council regarding the findings of the Southbridge Building and Grounds Management Study of January 28, 2018. Now, in those 4 key areas, a lot of that will be really recommendations. How are we going to tackle these major projects? And what realistically we can accomplish, and what will be the timeline for us to accomplish this, or put some things to bed, such as the building and grounds management study. We've been talking about that for 3 years. We have and I think the thought process that we had, the conversation that we had is, that's not one thing that a town manager has to do specifically himself, but how can he direct it with his new human resources individual that they can undertake the analysis of this plan, because it does mean moving, shifting of people, and analysis of that budget, and can we put this to bed finally, because we've talked about it for so long, and just recommendations on that. And then we do know that there's the ongoing projects, and I did put a brief 3 big ones. He continues to provide assistance to the Fire Station Building Committee, as you know. Given the fact that we have been approved for the funding, we do have a recommendation that will probably be coming to council for owner's project manager. That will require a lot of time ongoing. The ongoing pavement management program, that's going to be something that continually evolves, which is a big project, and we've done an awful lot in a year. And also trying to get this animal control shelter buttoned up. So I think those are a lot of, it's very ambitious, and I hopefully, and I know the town manager is worried about his ability to, I have no doubt he has the ability, there's no doubt about that, how to manage all the time with the day-to-day activities. And I think that's why, as a council, we have to assure him that this is not in my personal view, and I think Council Steve shared it, not something that we're not looking at all these have to be completed this year, but this is something that we put down on paper as to what our goals and objectives are this year, and to at least get some plans in place along with everything else that we ask him to do, along with budgets that we're going to be asking him to do, to continue. And I think we can evaluate that when we look at, I think the evaluation instrument that was put forward this year with the regular management was a good evaluation, and with the next step we would just evaluate and we'll develop something to say, ongoing, completed, and stuff like that. So I welcome any questions, and thank you to Councilor Steves and Councilor Ryan for the input that we had and all the other councils. Thank you. Defer to the town manager because we've had an awful lot of time to try to pin this down together, and I know he's been, it's been very busy, so I'll defer to the manager.
No, I thank Councilor Jovan for the explanation. Talking about ability, I think together with staff, can we tackle a lot of these? Yes. It's fiscal year 22. We're now in November. That would be less than 8 months. I don't know that we can get all of those. But can we get started on a lot of them? And are some of them already starting? Yes. So we can do our best and endeavor to get as much of this done as possible. I would also put on there that we're in a cycle where we're going to be looking at all of our collective bargaining agreements in the second half of this fiscal year. And we have some ongoing projects. The biggest one that comes to mind is ARPA. And I've asked staff, I just didn't have time this week with all the interviews to compile the list, but we've asked everybody to submit their recommendations for projects for the individual departments, and we're going to be showing them to you. And we have to work to get your approval for those projects and then get those projects underway almost on the same timeline as the curbside collection. So we have that money and we want to utilize it responsibly. So there'll be a lot of things going on, and then as you often hear from me, things come up unexpectedly. So, I think we can get a jump on a lot of these. We may not be able to finish them all by the end of June 2022, but they're the type of goals that I think I can help you with and hopefully get as many of them knocked off as possible.
Good. Councilor Catrona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, thanks to the committee, Councilor Jovan and his committee. I think this is a good comprehensive document that we have in front of us. I do like that there's no timelines on here for completion. I think it covers a small portion of the day-to-day and month-to-month tasks that are too numerous to mention for this town manager. It gives us a good tool for evaluation for next year, and there's no question in my mind that this town manager will look to attempt as many of these, to complete as many of these as he possibly can. And I'll certainly be supporting it this evening. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Lazo.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say thank you to the people that put it together, the mini committee, so to speak. I've always been of the thought process of if you can accomplish 3 goals in a year, big goals, above and beyond the operations of the community, because I do know how this works. I think we all know the day-to-day business sometimes you can think it's going to be an easy day, and all of a sudden it's on overload. And I think the goals and objectives are great. I think we got a good document. But this town manager, if I may say, has done a marvelous job mopping up after the last manager. And this council with this manager seem to have a mantra of get it done. And I know that the manager has went above and beyond in some of these issues to get it done for the council. And I think that moving forward, now that we've basically got our head around the programming and what we're doing in the direction that we're going, I think that we can settle in and understand that sometimes you don't have to have as many meetings as we do have in the past year or two, and I think we did it because we wanted to get it done. and we worked at it. The manager was right with us, shoulder to shoulder. So going forward, great document. Ladies and gentlemen, just, you got to look at what we're doing in the town of Southbridge. There are a lot of projects in the chute. I mean, just roads alone and sidewalks. Wasn't a few years ago, they weren't going to do roads and sidewalks. That's all we had was excuses. And now the excuses have been brushed aside, and get it done has been the motto. And with the planning and development and other subcommittees, I think that there's been a lot of work done really above the normal agenda. Job well done. Let's continue the good work, and maybe the human side of us will come out and have some sympathy for some time off and maybe some breathing room in between the projects. Thank you.
Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To you, I have a question for Mr. McCall. Before I say it's a great paper and good job, did you found the magic stick?
I might need a new one for the next fiscal year.
Good job. Thank you.
Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank the committee for putting a fine product together, and that you worked together with the town manager to bring it to a fold. I do have a couple questions because everybody's brought up there's so much stuff going on, and this may be to the chair of the committee or the town manager. A lot of things that we talked about was completions and not setting timelines. The question on the personal financial, it's the next to last bullet on their implementation and completion of performance evaluation of town employees. Is this is the goal to complete an actual evaluation on the town employees in 8 months? Or are we going to educate, or build, educate, and then provide to the town employees?
Yeah, I think from our perspective was, one, I don't think there's really a good evaluation instrument for town employees. So it's really building the capacity to do evaluations, and then I think it would be on the town manager also to look at those employees. And we do know that we have an awful lot of new employees. You know, we're going to have a new treasurer director, we're going to have a brand new office staff upstairs, brand new human resources. So those evaluations would probably be a year out anyway. So try to develop how that evaluation instrument would look for town employees. Now you have an assessor, chief assessor, principal assessor that leaving. So you have a lot of new employees, so that's why you have the onboarding process for all new employees. Then what would that evaluation, with the new human resources director coming aboard, that would be part of that charge, I think, with the town manager. So I think our evaluation would be, or the look, and I'll let the town manager continue, but you have all these pieces being put into place to develop the system. So it really is the development of the system, and then it would be up to the manager on his evaluations, because then it would be incumbent on him when he brings up any department heads that are reappointed, that would be based on that evaluation.
Right.
So, right, I would think that evaluation, he would run the day-to-day, the evaluation of those employees, but then when it comes to, because we've had this conversation before with the former, or you put this person, whoever it was, department head up for reappointment, was there any evaluation done on him, and then come to find out when the town manager, Mr. McCall walks in, town manager McCall walks in, there's no evaluations anywhere. So I think it really is build the system, build the capacity, and then have the final product. But I'll let Mr. Town Manager elaborate on anything else.
As Councilor Jovan just alluded to, you know, being an outsider walking in, you immediately take notice and stock of things that you're used to seeing elsewhere, and that was one of the first things I noted. And I'm excited to work with the people that we're bringing on board for the HR component here, and I'm hoping to sit down with them to talk about this, as well as look at the personnel rules. And there's some other things that I think with the new treasurer that I want to visit. They may not seem like big ticket items to people, but they will help with efficiencies and effectiveness of what we do here. Just simple things in terms of how we handle payroll, how we handle accruals. Some people get all of their vacation on one time, some accrue it month to month. I think we need some consistency, and we need to evaluate a lot of that so that we don't have a lot of manual entry by people, so that we can automate more of these things. So this, you know, with turnover, there's also opportunity. So I think recognizing some of these challenges and then having new people coming in with fresh sets of eyes, that goal there is something that I do want to tackle, because I think there's a lot of benefit from reevaluating how we've been doing things. And it is, again, an important tool for the evaluation. You want to recognize your good employees, and then you want to recognize those who need some help and help them along the way to make them better employees and work for the community. So I see no downside to putting the evaluations, I'm evaluated, they should, we're all evaluated. Some of you folks, it's the ballot box here, it's right in front of the dais, but again, to the councilor's point and others, that we need to have some benchmarks so that we know who's doing what and how well they're doing. So it's worth working on.
Councilor Adams.
Thank you. Just to continue on, no, I don't disagree that people should be evaluated. I think that's a great thing. And but I was just wondering about the wording itself. So there was no come evaluation time, come on the goals and objectives. It's basically say that by a certain date or a certain period of time, this has to be implemented. I was thinking more of build, educate, and start implementation. And that way we can see, like the town manager brought up, small benchmarks as we move along in the next 8 months before his evaluation kicks in. Because some people could take that as it's supposed to be done based on implementation and completion of performance evaluation of town hall employees. So that means by the time, I hope I'm not confusing anybody, I'm just trying to figure out by June 30th, is this supposed to be completed for evaluation, or is this something that we can just start building on and educating individuals and then start the implementation process for the town manager? I'm not trying to make anything more complicated. I think employees need to be evaluated on a consistent basis, but I just, the wording of implementation and completion.
So, thank you, if I could, Mr. Chairman. I think that's where, when we build the evaluation instrument of the town manager, that's where it's going to be a ongoing, partially meets,
Okay.
and do these portions of that evaluation in such a manner that it's probably not weighted as heavily on the overall score, but hey, is there some, and I get to your point, and I concede your point. However, there may be certain employees that are up for reappointment that you would want evaluations done, so when it came here before us. So I think, again, that would be something that the town manager could bring to us at a later date, saying this is where I'm at on the evaluation instrument itself. These are who and maybe even a proposal of how that, because it could go that the evaluation is going to go in different cycles or whatever, based on hiring dates as well. So I'm sure, again, that's something I think with the new, this is where we have the opportunity, I think, as a town with new management to really build good systems as to how we will proceed going forward with this whole process. Because the new human resources manager with the town manager can develop a policy or whatever for us as well that says, to the town manager's point, you are hired on this date, your vacation time either accrues or is front-loaded. What is that process going to look at? Do we have anything in writing as a personnel practice that says you are evaluated within 4 months for continued employment? So we have a unique opportunity right now with brand new staff to really develop an efficient, we are a business. We're a town government, but we are a business, and we should have those business practices in place. And I think, I understand your point as to a timeline, but I think, again, as a council, we just have to be realistic about how we perceive this going forward for the next 6 months and over the next year.
Okay. I just, in a way, I'm trying to protect the town manager at the same time. It was just, that's why I was looking at it, because somebody could say completion. June 30th is it completed? And that's all. But I think it's good. I think no doubt about it, the town manager should evaluate his employees and should work it down through the chain of command. And I guess the other question I had was under infrastructure and asset management. Again, the same question of goal, complete a review. Is it something like, would other wording help as far as, because this is a huge project, would it be something like start a review or implement or build. I don't know. I don't know if that wording would be something that come June 30th going, okay, so it has to complete a review of all these huge documents that have been brought forward under studies, that's all. Because it is a big, huge project.
Well, again, I think when I say complete a review, so we have this buildings and grounds management study. Not a huge document. He reads the document and he says, hey, I've tasked out to human resources that these are some of the things that we will look at so that we can come to council. That, to me, that's a review. That's why I didn't put analysis. I put review. As opposed to the former goals and objectives was complete analysis and recommendation. It really was, hey, review this, give us some recommendations about how we can proceed, and then he can give us some timelines as to, I anticipate, based on my review of this plan, I've tasked out ABC to come up with a plan. Review of the facilities. We've already talked about earlier tonight that in the EHS subcommittee meeting, we had a good dialogue about school buildings, right? And I think we already talked about in that meeting in EHS subcommittee that, hey, Mr. Town Manager, you sit with a receiver, talk about some of these things that we've discussed this evening, and give us a recommendation about how we might go. Is it a committee? Is it hiring an engineer to do roof studies? What is it? That is the review already. Part of that, and we're all familiar with these studies because we've been looking at them for so many years. Regular facility studies. I mean, you look at those facilities and what did they say on town facilities? It said, you need to replace your fire station, you need an animal shelter. Those were the two key recommendations. So the review of that is, hey, we know we have some, we've talked about the town hall, but on this, hey, the review is, these are the priorities, and this is how we're gonna go. Well, I know based on this study, fire station's already being planned, this is where we're at, this is where we're going. Animal shelter, we have some hurdles to overcome, but this is where we're at on this, and we'll take a look at others. So it really is the review of this, not the detailed analysis, because it really is, did you take a look at it? What are some of your basic recommendations? How are we gonna move forward? With recommendations, how we move forward, because it could be, I need a municipal building committee, or do we activate, Councilor Lauser and I have talked about, do you have a municipal building committee or a standing committee that oversees all buildings and starts to look at everything on a recurring basis? Is that a recommendation as well? So it's really a teamwork approach between us all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I got. Those are the only questions I had.
Council Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. This does, I think Councilor Jovan said this is very ambitious, and this does seem to be a very ambitious goal and objective for the town manager. There's an awful lot on here. I don't know if one person could do all of this in 1 year. I did have a question about the objective strategic plan of action for implementation of alternatives to the current curbside collection program. I don't really know what that means, alternatives. We did have curbside collection committee. We did vote on what we thought the plan should be. So the word alternative kind of throws me off. You're not saying that he could pick a different alternative or?
No, it's,
okay.
The town council voted a couple
Right,
alternatives.
right.
What is the plan on those alternatives?
Okay.
Because there wasn't one specific.
No, we did vote on one specific recommendation. We had some others, but the top vote getter was to have curbside collection exactly how we have it now. That was the top vote getter for the curbside collection committee.
From the committee, but the council hasn't voted.
Right, so that's a council.
So that's a council thing.
So that's a council goal and objective.
Yeah.
The other things here are a recommendation to the town council on how the town will proceed with addressing the recommendations from the Southbridge Town Facility Studies and the Building and Grounds Management. You know, we did have this capital planning committee going, and we were talking about things like this, our asset management, what we're going to do about some of the things that the town's going to have to fund going forward, how it's going to work out. I did invite the school receiver to our meeting. He chose not to attend. So some of these things, it would have been good if we would have had that discussion at our capital planning committee. I think we're probably going to have one more meeting. So I'd invite you to come down to our last meeting and attend, and we'll talk about some of the things that we want to do with regard to facility management. Other than that, it's a pretty good document that you have here. I have no problem with it. Thank you.
Very good. Would anyone else like to say a few words? Any further discussion? Very well. All those in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I request a roll call vote.
Certainly. Roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Catrona?
Yes.
Counselor Daniel?
Yes.
Counselor Dow?
Yes.
Counselor Jovan?
Yes.
Counselor Lazo?
Yes.
Counselor Marquetti?
Yes.
Counselor Ryan?
Yes.
And Counselor Steves?
Yes.
I believe that's 9-0. The motion passes. Agenda item 16, the third reading of the proposed new stormwater management bylaw, section 8-500, to be read at 3 separate meetings as recommended. Third and final reading, November 1st, 2021.
Section 8-500, Stormwater Management, 8-501, Stormwater Management, 8-501.1.0, General Provisions, 8-501.1.1, Title, Purpose, and Intent. A, this section shall be known as the Stormwater Management Bylaw of the Town of Southbridge, open parentheses, the bylaw, close parentheses, and may be so cited. B, increased volumes of stormwater, contaminated stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces, and soil erosion and sedimentation are major causes of impairment of water quality and flow in lakes, ponds, streams, rivers, wetlands, and groundwater, contamination of drinking water supplies, erosion of stream channels, alteration or destruction of aquatic and wildlife habitat, flooding and overloading or clogging of municipal catch basins and storm drainage systems. C, regulation of illicit discharges and land disturbance activities contributing contaminated stormwater runoff to the municipality's storm drain system is necessary for the protection of the municipality's water bodies and groundwater, and to safeguard the public health, safety, welfare, and the environment. This bylaw is required to meet all applicable federal and state requirements of the town's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems General Permit, commonly known as the NIPD's MS4 permit. D, the purposes, objectives, and intent of this bylaw are as follows. 1, to prevent pollutants from entering the municipality's storm drainage system and waters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 2, to establish an authorized enforcement agency, promulgate, adopt, implement, enforce, and amend stormwater regulations. 3, to prohibit non-stormwater and unauthorized discharges, connections, and obstructions to the municipal storm drainage system. 4, to require the removal of all such illicit discharges, connections, and or obstructions. 5, to comply with state and federal statutes and regulations relating to stormwater discharges. 6, to establish procedures to regulate construction and post-construction stormwater runoff management from new development and redevelopment. And 7, to establish legal authority to ensure compliance with the provisions of this bylaw through inspection, monitoring, and enforcement. 8-501.1.2 Definitions. A, the terms used in this bylaw shall have the following meanings. 1, alteration of drainage characteristics. Any land disturbing activity as defined herein on an area of land that changes the water quality or the force, quantity, direction, timing, or location of runoff flowing from the area. Such changes include change from distributed runoff to confined discrete discharge, change in the volume of runoff from the area, change in the peak rate of runoff from the area, and change in the recharge to groundwater on the area. 2, authorized enforcement agency. The Director of Public Works and or his or her designees who have the authority to enforce the Stormwater Management Bylaw and the Stormwater Management Rules and Regulations. 3, Clean Water Act, the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, 33 U.S.C. Section 1251 and sequential, and any subsequent amendments thereto. 4, clearing, any activity that removes the vegetative surface cover. Clearing activities generally include grubbing activity as defined below. 5, common plan of development or sale, a contiguous area where multiple separate and distinct construction activities are occurring under one plan. 6, critical area, a geographical area which has been identified by the town, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, or the United States Environmental Protection Agency as being an area with high potential for causing stormwater pollution and has its geographical limits defined in the stormwater rules and regulations promulgated in accordance with subsection 8-501.1.7 of this bylaw. 7, development, the modification of land to accommodate a new use or expansion of use, usually involving construction. 8, director, the director of the Department of Public. 9, discharge, the addition from any source of any substance or combination of substances into the municipal storm drain system or into the waters of the United States or common. 10, discharger, the person or party responsible for a discharge. 11, erosion, the wearing away of the land surface by natural or artificial forces such as wind, water, ice, gravity, or vehicle traffic, and the subsequent detachment and transportation of soil parts. 12, grading, changing the level or shape of the ground surface. 13, groundwater, water beneath the surface of the ground. 14, grubbing, the act of clearing land surface by digging up roots and stumps. 15, illicit connections. An illicit connection is defined as either of the following. A, any drain or conveyance, whether on the surface or subsurface, which allows an illicit discharge to enter the municipal storm drain system, including but not limited to any conveyances which allow any non-stormwater discharge, including sewage, processed wastewater, and wash water to enter the municipal storm drain system, and any connections to the municipal storm drain system from indoor drains and sinks, regardless of whether said drain or connection had been previously allowed, permitted, or approved by a government agency. Or B, any drain or conveyance connected from a commercial or industrial land use to the municipal storm drain system which has not been documented in plans, maps, or equivalent records and approved by the town. 16, illicit discharge. Any direct or indirect non-stormwater discharge to the municipal storm drain system, except as exempted in subsection 8-501.2.2 of this bylaw. 17, impervious surface. Any material or structure on or above the ground that prevents water infiltrating the underlying soil. Impervious surface includes without limitation roads, paved parking lots, sidewalks, rooftops, and solar panels. Impervious surface also includes soils, gravel driveways, and similar surfaces with a runoff coefficient, open parentheses, rational method, close parentheses, greater than 0.85. 18, land disturbing activity, land disturbance, or disturbance of land. Any activity, including clearing and grubbing, that causes a change in the position or location of soil, sand, rock, gravel, or similar earth material. 19, Massachusetts Stormwater Policy. The policy and guidance handbook issued by the Department of Environmental Protection, as amended, that coordinates the requirements prescribed by state regulations promulgated under the authority of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGL, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Massachusetts Clean Water Act, MGL, Chapter 21, Sections 23 through 56. The policy addresses stormwater impacts through implementation of performance standards to reduce or prevent pollutants from reaching water bodies and control the quantity of runoff from a site. The handbook provides detailed guidance on the policy. 20, municipal storm drain system or municipal separate storm sewer system, open parentheses, MS4, close parentheses. A system of conveyances designed or used for collecting or conveying stormwater, including any road with a drainage system, gutter, curb, inlet, piped storm drain, pumping facility, retention or detention basin, natural or man-made or altered drainage channel, reservoir, and other drainage structure that together comprise the storm drainage system owned or operated by the town. 21, municipality, refers to the town of South. 22, national pollutant discharge elimination system, open parentheses, NIPDES, close parentheses. Stormwater discharge permits. General, group, and individual stormwater discharge permits issued by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, which regulate facilities to find federal NIPDES regulations pursuant to the Clean Water Act. 23, non-stormwater discharge. Any discharge to the municipal storm drain system that is not composed entirely of stormwater. 24, owner, a party with a legal or equitable interest in property. 25, party or person. Any individual, group of individuals, association, partnership, corporation, company, business organization, trust, estate, legal entity, agency, public or quasi-public body, authority, department, or political subdivision of the town, the Commonwealth, or the federal government to the extent permitted by law, and any officer, employee, or agent of such party or person. 26, plan. Any announcement or piece of documentation or physical demarcation indicating construction activities may occur on a specific plot. 27, pollutant. Anything which causes or contributes to pollution. Pollutants may include, but are not limited to, paints, varnishes, and solvents, oil and other automotive fluids, non-hazardous liquid and solid wastes and yard wastes, refuse, rubbish, garbage, litter, or other discarded or abandoned objects, articles, and accumulations, so that same may cause or contribute to pollution. Floatables, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, hazardous substances and waste, sewage, fecal coliform and pathogen, dissolved and particulate metals, animal wastes, wastes and residues that result from constructing a building or structure, open parentheses, including but not limited to sediment, slurries, and concrete rinsates, close parentheses, and noxious or offensive matter. 28, pollution. The human-made or human-induced alteration of the quality of waters by pollutants to a degree which unreasonably affects or has the potential to unreasonably affect either the waters for beneficial uses or the facilities which serve these beneficial uses. 29, recharge. The replenishment of underground water reserves. 30, redevelopment. Development, rehabilitation, expansion, demolition, or phased projects that disturb the ground surface or increase the impervious area on previously developed sites. 31, responsible party or persons. Owners, persons with financial responsibility, and persons with operational responsibility. 32, runoff. Rainfall, snowmelt, or irrigation water flowing over the ground surface. 33, sediment. Mineral or organic soil material that is transported by wind or water from its origin to another location, the product of erosion processes. 34, sedimentation. The process or act of deposition of sediment. 35, site. Any lot or parcel of land or area of property where land disturbing activities are, were, or will be performed. 36, slope. The incline of a ground surface, expressed as a ratio of vertical distance to horizontal distance. 37. Soil, earth materials including duff, humic materials, sand, rock, gravel, or similar material. 38. Stormwater, any surface flow, runoff, and drainage consisting entirely of water from rainstorm events. 39. Stormwater advisory, a team consisting of the Director of Public Works, the Deputy Director of Public Works, the Town Planner, the Conservation Agent, the Director of Inspection Services, and a citizen member appointed by the Town Manager. Any member acting in their capacity as a town employee may elect to send a qualified delegate in their place. The purpose of the Stormwater Advisory Team is to advise the authorized enforcement agency on stormwater management matters. Their decisions shall be non-binding. 40. Strip, any activity which removes the vegetative ground surface cover, including tree removal, clearing, grubbing, and storage or removal of topsoil. 41. Surface water discharge permit, a permit issued by the Department of Environmental Protection, open parentheses, DEP, close parentheses, pursuant to 314 CMR 3.00 that authorizes the discharge of pollutants to waters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. 42. Town of Southbridge, Massachusetts. 43. Vernal pools, temporary bodies of fresh water which provide critical habitat for a number of vertebrate and invertebrate wildlife species, or as defined in the town's wetlands bylaw. 44. Watercourse, a natural or man-made channel through which water flows or a stream of water, including a river, brook, or underground stream. 45. Waters of the Commonwealth, all waters within the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth, including without limitation rivers, streams, lakes, ponds, springs, impoundments, estuaries, wetlands, coastal waters, groundwaters, and vernal pools. 46. Wetland resource area, areas specified in the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and in the town's wetlands bylaw, open parentheses, if applicable, close parentheses. 47. Wetlands, coastal and freshwater wetlands, including wet meadows, marshes, swamps, and bogs, as defined and determined pursuant to MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and 310 CMR 10.00, and sequence. 8-501.1.3, authority and responsibility for enforcement. A. This bylaw is adopted under the authority granted by the Home Rule Amendment of the Massachusetts Constitution and the Home Rule Procedures Act, open parentheses, MGL Chapter 43B, close parentheses. The Town Charter, MGL Chapter 40, Section 21, pursuant to the regulations of the Federal Clean Water Act found at 40 CFR 122.34, and any other enabling authority available to the town. B. The Director of Public Works, or an authorized agent thereof, open parentheses, hereafter known as the Authorized Enforcement Agency, close parentheses, shall administer, implement, and enforce the provisions of this bylaw, its regulations, orders, violation notices, and enforcement orders, and may pursue all civil or criminal remedies for such violation. C. The Authorized Enforcement Agency shall have the authority to seek remedies as described within the stormwater regulations to enforce this bylaw, its regulations, and or the terms and conditions of its permit. D. Any person found to be violating any of the provisions of this bylaw and regulations promulgated by the Authorized Enforcement Agency pursuant to the authority granted by this bylaw and by any and all applicable federal, state, or local laws, regulations, or rules shall be subject to enforcement action as described within the stormwater regulations. Each day in which any such violation continues shall be deemed a separate offense. E. Any person found to be violating any of the provisions of this bylaw and regulations promulgated by the Authorized Enforcement Agency pursuant to the authority granted by this bylaw and by any and all applicable federal, state, or local laws, regulations, or rules shall become liable to the town for any expense, loss, or damage occasioned to the town by reason of such violation. F. Any person receiving notice of an enforcement action may appeal the determination of the Authorized Enforcement Agency. Procedures and requirements shall be defined and included as part any rules and regulations promulgated as permitted under subsection 8-501.1.7 of this bylaw. G. Non-criminal disposition. As an alternative to criminal prosecution or civil action, the Authorized Enforcement Agency may elect to utilize the non-criminal disposition procedure set forth in MGL Chapter 40, Section 21D, and Town Bylaw 1-111, Schedule of Penalties D through F, to be enforced by an officer of the Southbridge Police Department. The penalty for the first violation in one calendar year shall be $250. The penalty for the second violation of the same provision within the same calendar year shall be $275. The penalty for the third and subsequent violations of the same provision within the same calendar year shall be $300. Each day or part thereof that such violation occurs or continues shall constitute a separate offense. 8-501.1.4 Applicability. A. This bylaw shall apply to every user of the municipal storm drainage system, including dischargers to the municipal storm drainage system and to the waters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and shall also apply to any land disturbing activity within the town of Southbridge where land disturbance is undertaken on a single property or as part of a larger common plan of development or sale that results in total cumulative disturbance of 1 acre or more of land, or 1. Total cumulative added impervious surface meets or exceeds 5,000 square feet. 2. Land disturbance totals a volume of over 1,000 cubic yards of soil. 3. Project occurs in a critical area. 4. Land disturbance occurs in sloped areas, open parentheses, 15% slope or greater, close parentheses. 5. Imperviousness is increased to over 50% of parcel area. B. The following land disturbance activities are exempt from the requirement requirements of this bylaw. 1. Normal maintenance and improvement of municipal-owned public ways and related infrastructure. 2. Normal maintenance of land in agricultural use as defined by the Wetlands Protection Act, Regulation 310 CMR 10.04. 3. Repair or replacement of septic systems when required by the Board of Health for the protection of public health. 4. Normal maintenance of existing landscaping, gardens, or lawn areas associated with a single-family dwelling, provided such maintenance does not include the addition of more than 100 cubic yards of soil material, construction of any walls, alteration of existing grades by more than 1 foot in elevation, or alteration of drainage characteristics. 5. The construction of fencing that will not alter existing terrain or drainage patterns. 6. Construction of utilities other than drainage, open parentheses, gas, water, electric, telephone, etc., close parentheses, that will not alter terrain or drainage patterns. 7. Activities conducted in accordance with an approved Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation forest stewardship plan. 8. Regular and approved maintenance of stormwater management structure. 9. Emergency work to protect life, limb, or property. 8-501.1.5. Ultimate responsibility of discharger. A. The standards set forth herein and promulgated pursuant to this bylaw are minimum standards. This bylaw does not intend nor imply that compliance by any person will ensure that there will be no contamination, pollution, nor unauthorized discharge of pollutants into waters of the Commonwealth caused by said person. This bylaw shall not create liability on the part of the municipality or any agent or employee thereof for any damages that result from any discharger's reliance on this bylaw or any administrative decision lawfully made thereunder. 8-501.1.6. Authority to enter, inspect, sample, establish sampling devices, and test. A. To the extent permitted by law, or if authorized by the owner or other party in control of the property, the authorized enforcement agency or other agents, officers, and employees of the Department of Public Works may enter upon privately owned property for the purpose of performing their duties under this bylaw and may make or cause to be made such examinations, surveys, or sampling as the authorized enforcement agency deems responsibly necessary. During any inspection as provided herein, the authorized enforcement agency may take any samples and perform any testing deemed necessary to aid in pursuit of the inquiry or to record site activities. B. The authorized enforcement agency may require by written notice that any person engaged in any activity and or owning or operating any facility which may cause or contribute to stormwater pollution, illicit discharges, and or non-stormwater discharges to the municipal storm drain system or waters of the Commonwealth undertake at said person's expense such monitoring and analyses and furnish such reports to the town as deemed necessary to determine compliance with this authorized enforcement agency. C. The authorized enforcement agency may suspend municipal storm drain system access to any person or property without prior written notice when such suspension is necessary to stop an actual or threatened discharge of pollutants that presents imminent risk of harm to the public health, safety, welfare, or the environment. In the event any person fails to comply with an emergency suspension order, the authorized enforcement agency may take all reasonable steps to prevent or minimize harm to the public health, safety, welfare, or the environment. D. Filing an application for a stormwater management permit grants the authorized enforcement agency and his or her designees permission to enter the site to verify the information in the application and to inspect for compliance with the resulting permit. 8-501.1.7 Regulations. A. Under the powers granted by Chapter 6, Section 2-1 of the Home Rule Charter of the Town of Southbridge, the Director of Public Works, acting as authorized enforcement agent, and his or her designees shall from time to time propose to the town manager adoption of or amendments or revisions to rules and regulations to effectuate the purposes of this bylaw. Said regulations may include, but shall not be limited to, provisions regarding administration, application requirements, fees, permitting procedures and requirements, design standards, surety requirements, inspection and site supervision requirements, waivers and exemptions, and enforcement procedures. B. A true copy of the rules and regulations with their most recent amendments shall be kept on file, available for inspection in the Office of the Inspector of Buildings, in the Office of the Director of Public Works, and in the Office of the Town Clerk. C. Failure by the authorized enforcement agent or his or her designees to promulgate such rules and regulations shall not have the effect of suspending or invalidating this bylaw. 8-501.1.8 Severability. A. The provisions of this bylaw are hereby declared to be severable. If any provision, clause, sentence, or paragraph of this bylaw, or the application thereof to any person, establishment, or circumstances shall be held invalid, such invalidity shall not affect the other provisions or application of this bylaw. 8-501.1.9 Transitional provisions. A. Owners shall have 60 days from the effective date of this bylaw to comply with its provisions, provided good cause is shown for the failure to comply with the bylaw during that period. 8-501.2.0 Illicit discharge detection and elimination. 8-501.2.1 Prohibited activities. A. Illicit discharges. No person shall dump, discharge, cause, or allow to be discharged into the municipal storm drain system, watercourses, or waters of the Commonwealth any pollutant or non-stormwater discharge. As soon as a person responsible for a facility or operation, or responsible for emergency response for a facility or operation, has information of or suspects a release of materials at that facility or operation resulting in, or which may result in discharge of pollutants or illicit discharges into stormwater to the municipal storm drainage system or waters of the Commonwealth, the person shall immediately notify the authorized enforcement agency and take take all necessary steps to ensure discovery, containment, and cleanup of the release. B. Illicit connections. No person shall construct, use, allow, maintain, or continue any illicit connection to the municipal storm drain system, regardless of whether the connection was permissible under applicable law, regulation, or custom at the time of connection. C. Obstruction of municipal storm drain system. No person shall obstruct or interfere with the normal flow of stormwater into or out of the municipal storm drain system without prior written approval from the authorized enforcement agency. 8-501.2.2. Exception. A. The following non-stormwater discharges and flows to the municipal storm drain system and to waters of the Commonwealth are exempt from the prohibition on illicit discharges, provided that, in the opinion of the authorized enforcement agency, the source is not a significant contributor of pollutant to the municipal storm drain system or to waters of the Commonwealth. 1. Potable water line flushing. 2. Uncontaminated pumped groundwater and other discharges from potable water sources. 3. Landscape irrigation and lawn watering. 4. Diverted stream flow. 5. Rising groundwater. 6. Groundwater infiltration to the municipal storm drain system. 7. Uncontaminated foundation footing drains. 8. Uncontaminated water from crawl space pumps. 9. Air conditioning condensation. 10. Uncontaminated non-industrial roof drains. 11. Natural springs. 12. Individual residential and occasional non-commercial car washing. 13. Flows from riparian habitats and wetlands. 14. Dechlorinated swimming pool discharges, open parentheses, provided that the chlorine content is less than 1 part per million, water has been allowed to stand for 1 week prior to draining, and that the discharge is performed in such a way as not to cause a nuisance, close parentheses. 15. Street sweeping waters. 16. Flows resulting from firefighting activities. 17. Water from dive water testing with written authorization from the authorized enforcement agency. 18. Non-stormwater discharges permitted under a NIPDES permit, waiver, or waste discharge order administered under the authority of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or a surface water discharge permitted by DEP, provided that the discharge is in full compliance with all requirements of the permit, waiver, or order, and other applicable laws and regulations, and provided further that written approval has been granted by the authorized enforcement agency for any discharge to the municipal storm drain system. 19. Any other non-stormwater discharges that are not a source of pollutants to the municipal storm drain system nor waters of the Commonwealth, as set forth in a written determination by the authorized enforcement agency. 8-501.3.0. Stormwater management and erosion control. 8-501.3.1. Permits and procedures. A. No person may undertake land disturbance activity regulated by this bylaw in subsection 8-501.1.4 applicability without a stormwater management permit from the authorized enforcement agency pursuant to this bylaw and regulations promulgated hereunder. B. Permit procedures and requirements shall be defined and included as part of any rules and regulations promulgated as permitted under subsection 8-501.1.7 regulations of this bylaw. 8-501.3.2 Fees. A. The authorized enforcement agency shall establish fees to cover expenses connected with application review and monitoring permit compliance. The fees shall be sufficient to cover the costs of town secretarial staff and professional staff time for the review, processing, and monitoring an application and permit. B. The authorized enforcement agency may require the owner to pay reasonable costs to be incurred by the authorized enforcement agency for the employment of outside consultants pursuant to regulations as authorized by MGL Chapter 44, Section 53G. 8-501.3.3 Surety. A. The authorized enforcement agency may require the permittee to post before the start of any land disturbance activity a surety bond, irrevocable letter of credit, cash, or other acceptable security. The form of the bond shall be approved by town council if necessary and be in an amount deemed sufficient by the authorized enforcement agency to ensure that the work will be completed in accordance with the permit. If the project is phased, the authorized enforcement agency may, in its sole and absolute discretion, release part of the bond as each phase is completed in compliance with the permit, but the bond may not be fully released till the authorized enforcement agency has received a final report stating that all the work has been satisfactorily completed as required in the regulations. 8-501.3.4 Waivers. A. The authorized enforcement agency may waive strict compliance with any requirement of the rules and regulations promulgated hereunder where such action is allowed by federal, state, and local statutes and/or regulations, is in the public interest, and is not inconsistent with the purpose and intent of this bylaw.
Does anyone wish to make any amendments to this third and final reading? Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did ask earlier in the first time we talked about this, about the exemption for agriculture, and you were going to get back to me on that through you to the town manager, through to Ms. Blakely. Thank you.
There was a clarification, I believe, Mr. Marquetti made to the exemption for the agriculture to be consistent with the Mass Wetlands Bylaw exemptions. So it follows the same as the Mass Wetlands Bylaws rules and regulations for what farmland is considered. So that's where it's mirroring off of. And I think that definition was also put in there at the same time to clarify that.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. Agenda item 17, vote to approve the proposed stormwater management bylaw, section 8500, as read and amended.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading over this bylaw, and also I read over the rules and regulations that accompanied this bylaw when it was first brought to our attention last January. I look at it as this really is an unfunded mandate. The US EPA mandates it, the federal government won't fund it. If I understand reading through all the regs and regulations, that we're going to end up having to hire quite a few people to implement this stormwater bylaw. I can't imagine that the DPW director could handle all of this that goes with this. Every user in town, from what I'm reading, is subject to this regulation, which apply to charges, fees, rates, assessments. They're also subject to applicable regulations, federal, state, and local. The authorized enforcement agency, which is the DPW director, administers, implements, enforces rules and regulations. The town is going to need an environmental site monitor. We'll need a stormwater advisory team, which will be made up of the DPW director, deputy DPW director, town planner, conservation agent, director of inspections. You may select a designee. The DPW director will oversee it. The town attorney will have to be involved. The town manager will be involved. The police department will be involved with enforcement. The town assessor will be involved with tax liens for noncompliance. The owner can appeal any decision of the enforcement authority to the town manager. The town manager rejects it, it comes to the town council. There's going to be a lot involved in this. And the question is, who's going to pay for all this? Well, the residents are going to pay for it all. I can't understand why we're not screaming at our federal representatives and asking them if they're going to pay for this. I feel like the town council has been thrown at the council and say, you have to fund it. And I had questions about the farmers who, I don't even understand why they're exempt or what that's all about, who's going to pay for that. That was one thing I just didn't understand. You cleared it up a little bit, I guess. However, if they're exempt, are they exempt from fees? I just don't, or the regulations, not quite sure what that's all about. But really, it's an unfunded mandate. I think the federal government should be helping us pay for this. And I understand it's something we can't get out of, but I do think it should be funded better than just throwing it on the taxpayers of Southbridge. Not only that, the owners are going to have to be paying a lot more for this as well. They're going to have to hire professionals to walk them through this stormwater bylaw. It's amazing going through that rules and regulation how much is going to be involved in this. I don't think you're going to be able to do it alone, which means we're going to have to hire more people, probably have to hire a whole department for this. I wouldn't be surprised if every department in this town has to have one person in their department that knows a little bit about the stormwater bylaw. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Orion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Blakely. Now, this is already, the EPA already knows about this, correct? That we're behind in the adoption of, if you could, yeah.
These federal laws have been around for, and forgive me because I don't know the original origination date, but it's been over, this is the second round that the MS4 permit that we are going through right now has gone through. So it's been over 10, it's actually more than that, it's like 15 years because when it was first promulgated and it was supposed to be reviewed of the federal review, it got delayed even then. So it's been this we're dealing with. This bylaw that we have here in front of us, although it has been updated in this new notice of intent and the new re-upped law for the stormwater from the federal government side was a requirement of this previous law. So this isn't a new regulation that has been put on to us. And this bylaw was required 15 years ago. It was started 15 years ago. It was just never completed. It's been one of these ongoing things that needed to be implemented that we have basically not implemented yet. We were a little bit behind in that implementation. EPA has basically come back to us and said, you have to do this now. It's not that they have basically come back to us and say, you need to get in compliance with having the bylaw. There's benefits to having the bylaw. We do have some sites that show that we probably should have had a stronger stormwater bylaw in the past, that we had some teeth behind it to do some enforcement actions on. And I do agree, this is a tremendous undertaking. The whole stormwater permitting and the whole stormwater MS4 compliance, this is just one piece of it, is very onerous. And it's not just this, there's other pieces of sampling and inspecting and making sure there's not illicit discharges and making sure that, you know, things like soaps and oils are not being spilt into our rivers, which is very important, but it does put a lot of the requirements on the town, cities and towns all across the state. It's not just us. This is statewide. This is countrywide. This is a federal regulation. The way it's implemented is a little different from state to state, but it's still a federal regulation. It's going to be a tremendous burden, and we're going to be working on it. That's one of the town manager's goals and objectives, and how we become in compliance, and part of that is how we fund it. This is a starting point. This is a step. This is part of our compliance that we need to do, and this is probably the most major from a legal standpoint of what the town has to be able to enforce it and start moving forward of what we're required. The next step is for us to look at the regulations, which are how we're going to implement it. They are onerous, but this is, yes, it's on every place in town, but it only affects when you're actually doing work that you have to get this permit. When you're actually expanding, when you actually decide that you're going to redevelop a site or develop a site and you're going to disturb so much or you're going to put so much impervious area. So it's not always going to be, it could be for the homeowner, like on a single site, depending on how much they're doing, or it could not be for the homeowner. And yes, there's going to be some education in the building department and with conservation, and they've already been involved. They already started hearing about this from us, from Eric, from myself, from Matt. And there's going to be some growing pains of how we get this permit started. We don't know how much it's going to take on us yet because we don't know how many permits we're going to have to review. But this is just one part of the stormwater. And I will say, we probably owe you a overall explanation of the permit, and I'd love to do get you a whole presentation of all the different parts of the permit that we need to comply with so that people have a little bit of education and background. Because I mentioned some of them already, the sampling and things of that nature. It's only one part. The bylaw is one part, the regulations are one part, and that has to do with construction and new construction and reconstructions. It doesn't have to do with a site that's already there and just is stable. It has to do with new construction sites and what they are, and how we comply for those. It is going to be, to Councilor Marchetti's point, it is an unfunded mandate from the federal government. There wasn't funding that put in there. There are some different grants. We do different programs with coalitions. We try to get as much education materials out there. Education is a lot of this that goes on out there, and that's being done on a more state level that we put into. But I would say, yes, it is. We are probably in the next couple of years looking at a team of people that are going to just be doing stormwater. I am not going to sugarcoat that. We are going to need stormwater people. I've been saying this for a long time to the past manager. He knew this. It is something that we can definitely get into more, but this was the first step of us becoming in compliance with just our existing permit from the federal government. We weren't in compliance because we didn't have this bylaw. This bylaw gives us the ability to have teeth when people violate it and discharge into the river. Now we have something to hold up to. Okay? So this is a good start. This is just one piece of it. And yes, I appreciate that it's recognized that this could be a lot of work for us, depending. And let me just say this. I hope it's a lot of work for us, because you know what that means? There's a lot of development coming and there's growth in the town. So you have to look at it as a positive, right? If we're having to do these permits, that means that there are people coming here and building things, and that's what we really do want.
If I may continue, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Blakely, what could be the consequences if we did not vote to support this tonight? What are the consequences that could come down from the federal government if we do not start to implement this regulation? And you pointed out it was originally instituted in 2003, renewed in 2016, I believe, and the regulation got updated when it got renewed for 2019. So there's that time. I remember that from your presentation to my subcommittee. So there's what are the repercussions to the town if we do not start to implement this process we should have been doing since 2003?
So we would probably potentially face fines from the federal government and federal EPA at this point. They have put us under an ACO and said you need to keep progressing, and they keep on checking up on us. But eventually, if you voted no, they would really want some justification of why you're voting no. You didn't nobody made any revisions to the document that was presented. So they would probably be just saying, you just want to not comply with the regulation and we're going to fine you. So, they would go back and review the tapes and say, well, nobody had any comments, so I don't understand what the issue was at this point. So we would definitely they would come in and strongly say, you need to do this by such and such a date or face fines. It would be an administrative consent order.
Thank you for that. I tend to fully support this. It stinks. It is an unfunded mandate. I've dealt with them on the school side too, because there's plenty of them. They stink. Nobody likes them, but this is a mandate that's been on us. We have to implement it, or it's going to start hitting us with administrative fines. That's why are we going to subject it? It's going to come out of the taxpayer dollars anyway, and no one's lives are going to be better for it. So we might as well start to implement the regulation, start the process, and be in compliance with the federal government. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Councilor Lazo.
I'm going to vote no tonight, and I hope the federal government comes down. I'd like to be on the interview panel to actually talk to them about some of the things that we do, good things we do through conservation, through various other agencies in our community where we do protect our waterways. When Bob Patton did his parking lot, he had to go to the planning board and went through the conservation. He had to put in retention ponds. He did everything by the letter of the law. It is a beautiful parking lot down on the globe. The American Optical Company working near the river, the regulations are regulate. And in dealing with regulations, I'm not a big fan of unfunded liabilities. Look, if they want us to do something, I personally don't think we'll be fined. Yes, they will come down and say why, and I think we should explain it. I mean, how much can you put on a cost of living? If you own a home, if you rent an apartment, you don't pay taxes. You pay your payroll tax when you take it out of your check. But when you own a piece of real estate, and we have some people up here that do, and every time you do something to improve your property, they slam you, they regulate you, and then they punish. We need to challenge this and put it forward where it's not like we're driving bulldozers through rivers. It's not like we look at it, we get cited. Conservation is very strict. I deal with a lot of conservation from out of town, in town. I think we're regulated on the water all the time. Anytime you put a parking lot in, just our regulations in Southbridge alone on what you have to do is regulated. So to say that this is compounding it on top of all the other regulations. You know, we have, so some, you can put a tight tank in for, if you do a parking lot, you install it in the design. That's where you get the changes. But to turn around and put this in, this is real expensive, and if you don't pay taxes, you don't understand. But if you do pay taxes, you do understand. Because when they say your real estate tax is now $10,000 on your house, but when you pay your rent, you don't have any taxes on your house. And when you have more than one piece of property, you really, hey, I own 5 or 6 of them. You pay enough, Joe. But bottom line comes down to is, I just think it's too much regulation. I mean, the federal government is not right in what they're doing, and I can't condone what they're trying to do to local cities and towns. So, much like other issues, until the day you stand up and say no, you roll over and just keep paying. And that's why the federal government inside the Beltway is the way it is. Thank you.
Anyone else? Very good. We'll have a roll call vote on this.
Councilor Catrona?
No.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Councilor Dow?
Yes.
Councilor Jovan?
Yes.
Councilor Lazo?
No.
Councilor Marquetti?
No.
Councilor Ryan?
Yes.
Councilor Steves?
Yes.
And Councilor Adams?
Yes.
I have 6 on the affirmative, 3 in the negative. The motion passes.
Don't like it.
Justine.
Agenda item number 18, Council's Forum. We'll start on this side tonight. Councilor Marquetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I have tonight is I'm waiting from the town manager and Karen Harnois to schedule, which I hope is our last capital planning committee meeting. And I think we should be able to button it up after that. So anytime you're ready, I'm ready. And I hope that the committee members show up, and I still extend my invitation to Councilor Jovan did show up at one meeting. I appreciated it. And I still extend my invitation to Dr. Villar. So anytime you're ready, Mr. Manager, I'm ready. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Catrona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing this evening.
Thank you very much. Councilor Steves.
I have anything this evening there.
Very good, Councilor Steves. Councilor Ryan.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Councilor Lazo.
I have a couple of things. Just, I don't want to be repetition. I think you did a fine job, but Mario Piccioni, one of the political people in Southbridge, businessman, he was an icon, captain of the football team in 1957. He's the fabric of Southbridge. I just want to take a moment to say that, you know, he's going to be missed. His restaurant, fantastic. Everything he touched always was successful, and I'm sure he's in a good place. Secondly, I'd just like to thank Kim Farron for her years of service as the HR person. I know that every time I've dealt with her, and a lot of the public have had very successful dealings, it's going to be a hard one to replace. The fights are coming up on November 6th, and I know that Councilor Adams is working hard on it, the Veterans Group working hard on it. It's a great cause. The only thing is I'm trying to get a couple of spare fights in. I'm going to be talking to Councilor in the Veterans Group later on this week. I'm trying to get the Catrona Adams bout in, the Jovan Marquetti, and I want to top the ticket by fighting Vegas, the bad dog, if we can get him in the ring from the dog pen. But it's going to be a good fundraiser. I'm looking forward. I know Joe Dow's going to be there. I'll be there. Hope the citizens get tickets. We're going to really enjoy it. It's going to be a good time. Hopefully we can get these 3 bouts in, and maybe we'll find out who's right and wrong. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Lazo. Councilor Dow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To you, I want to say sorry for Mr. Mario's pass away, and good luck for Kim. And that's it. Good night.
Councilor Jovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just echo Councilor Lazo's thoughts to Ms. Farron and a couple other individuals that have left town employment. Thank them all for their service to the town of Southbridge, and Kim was very valuable in my time as chairman, so I thank her and wish her well in the sunny state of Florida, so wish her well down there. As to any fight between Council Marquetti and me, I will concede that fight because I'm sure Council Marquetti could take me. So, thank you. And finally, just want to say that, you know, as a council, we do have times where we disagree on certain topics, but the one thing that I found, and I've enjoyed working in the last couple of years on the council, that we do have spirited debates. However, there's times that we can meet in the coffee shop and then laugh and joke around and maybe bust each other a little bit. But the important thing is that there's a lot of important work that's gone on in the town of Southbridge over the last several years. And you hear it from the residents in town that they do get frustrated with the fact that, you know, hey, roads are under construction and the like. But then you have individuals that, when you really take a look at what is going on in town, I think it's a great opportunity for us to be excited about the change in Southbridge and the fact that we can become that community that is growing with this work, live, life concept. And yes, Charlton is getting the Amazons and the Walmart, but the big thing is they have the ability for the highways right there. I think our opportunity is, as a community, is to take a look at those people that get employed in those places to become a community that they can come live in and grow. And that's why it's important as us as councils to continue our mission to improve not only our roads, our infrastructure, we have a lot of excitement, and then really work with the receiver to improve the schools. I don't know what the answer is when it comes to the schools. I really don't. I think if you take, I don't think the state does either. I have a tremendous amount of respect, and I know I've been accused sometimes of carrying the water of the receiver. He has a tough job ahead of us. But I do believe that at some point, to Councilor Lazo's point about stormwater, we've been living the stormwater. I've heard about stormwater for all the years that I've been on council. You go to MMA meetings, there's whole seminars on how towns will address MS4 and all that. I think it's important as a community really to say, take a hard look at the state as what is the state doing to make the change in the schools and what are those benchmarks. It's not Dr. Bylaw. Dr. Bylaw is trying to do what they're telling. But if you really take a look at the state's website, they have nothing there that says what the benchmarks are, not just for Southbridge, but Lawrence and Holyoke. There's nothing on their website that says this is where you have to go as a district to come out of receivership. And I think maybe, I know there's been conversation, we have to have a conversation with these other communities to say, and put some pressure on the state. We're just a little experiment to them. A little social experiment that says, hey, we knew best about education. And I'll continue to read these TARE reports where they said that we didn't have governance, we didn't have oversight. And I'll challenge that conversation any day of the week. But we have to reach out to these partners and put some pressure on the state and our state legislatures. I have tremendous respect for State Representative Durant, State Senator Fatman, but they were behind the mission for us to be taken over. It's up to them now to step up to the plate that says 5 years later, 6 years later, your experiment with the town of Southbridge hasn't worked. And how can we work together with Holyoke and Lawrence and Southbridge to take the reins and know what's best for our kids and move forward. So we just have, I have a lot of excitement about the town of Southbridge and the changes that we're making, not only in the town hall and leadership, but also how we go forward with the community. And really, together, I know as a council, while we disagree, we do have one common mission, and let's continue that, and let's step up and really put some pressure on these mandates. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm already receiving texts on the bets for the fight that night. We do have, we're going to break it up a little bit on the amateur side, where USA Boxing is going to have to leave for a little bit, doors closed, which means for a good day. So I take up Councilor Lazo's initiative. Anyways, just a reminder, boxing's going on 6 November. Doors open at 5 o'clock. It's to benefit just not the Veterans Council, but Uptown Boxing Gym here in town, and USA Boxing will be reffing it. It's $20 at the door, so I hope to see a lot of people there that evening. And I hope everybody stays safe on that. Veterans Day, November 11th, 11 o'clock, right in front of the World War Memorial Park, right next to the fire station. We'll have about a 45-minute ceremony and then let people move on that day. And I do wish all the individuals that are leaving the town nothing but the best. I thank them for all their service to their community over the years, so I wish them the best. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Number 19, discussion of next meeting date, which was going to be Monday, November 15th at 7 p.m. here in the dais.
Very good. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Unanimous of all present.